Are you ready to do this?
Yep.
All right. All right. Well, welcome everyone to another episode of A Cup, Us, and You. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Tenisha.
And today's episode is going to revolve around our first love.
Yes. Oh.
Which should be you and I, but in all actuality, it's movies.
And books. Yeah.
And really just where it all started and where we're at today. You know, again, I always feel like it's always an interesting topic when you're trying to figure out what somebody absolutely just has a deep passion and love for. Because
right.
it varies from so many different people. And for you, I've known you forever, and I always know that it's always been books. You know, similar
right.
to me, it's always been movies. So I kind of wanted to take that opportunity for the both of us to really kind of take that deep dive. Because again, with A Cup, Us, and You, we always like to try to take coffee shop talk and take it out of the shop and bring it here to you. And so with that said, let's go the route of the origin story, if you will. And from your perspective, what is that first moment that you experienced books that really just changed it, being from something that was either being introduced or something that you knew of to like something that you love, where you just got hit by Cupid's arrow and you're like, oh my god, this is my jam, and this is what I'm going to be, this is what it's all about.
Okay.
Yeah, what did that point, when did that occur for you?
But before we jump in, I have to say I'm so excited. I am so excited to talk about this. You know, because it's your first, it's your love, it's something that you're passionate about.
It's your first and most consistent love.
Yeah, first and most consistent love. So.
And it's funny though, real quick, I love how deep we're gonna get with this, and again, that should probably be reserved for you and I. Be like, oh, I'm like, no. It's movies, it's books, and there's just a level of excitement and passion that there is no rival.
Yeah. It just makes me smile.
Yeah.
So I would have to say that it really started with like story time.
Okay, so like early elementary.
Like when it was story time, like it was super exciting. Yeah, I picture like my younger self, and on the inside, like be like, story time. Ah!
So real quick with your storytelling, was it go and sit somewhere in the room, like on a carpet, or was it like stay in your desk?
It was a mix. It was like sometimes like the teacher would read the book to us. Then there were moments where we could like read on our own. Okay. You know, but it was a mixture. It was a mixture. Okay. So I think it's great, especially being so young, because I just appreciated those times.
It was your gateway moment?
It was really my gateway moment. It really was, because of the fact that, you know, you learn, you know, math and you learn spelling, but
who needs those?
Who needs those things when you have story time? And then it was also cool, even though it was a little bit cheesy, like if you look at it, if you look back into time and like see your younger self, I'm sure like you would look at your teacher reading the book and they're making those noises and those voices, and you're like, that's so stupid, that's so cheesy. But as a little kid, you're like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Listen, we're listening to the Three Little Pigs, and they're doing the voice for the Big Bad Wolf. Like, that just got me super excited. Yeah. So it not only was the gateway to reading, I feel like it was just a gateway to just my appreciation for stories. Like, I just love a good story. Like, give me a good story. Whether that's in a book, whether that's in a show, whether that's us hanging out with people
and getting it firsthand
from them. I'm just a lover of stories. So I think the storytelling that time was definitely a gateway to.
That was the spark that set things ablaze.
Absolutely.
Okay.
For me.
And see, that's cool. Like I love. This is one of the things I love about the show is the fact of like hearing these little things. Like I personally haven't thought about story time and shit. Like I don't know, over 25 years, give or take, maybe 30. But instantly, once you said that, that just took me back, way back to like kindergarten, first grade.
Yeah.
For me, the reason why I asked that question is that for me in kindergarten, it was oh my gosh, it's story time. We're all going to leave our desks. We're going to sit. We're going to sit on the carpet or the floor or the reading carpet, if you will. And it was just the story and things of that nature. And it's funny because obviously your passion is books, mine's is movies. So we'll get into that a little bit more as I got older and a little bit more jaded to the fact that I'm like, what do you mean I have to read the book on my own? Aren't you supposed to read it? Aren't you supposed to interpret? Give me sounds and give me this and give me that. But that's so cool that as a kid was something that sparked a lifelong interest and journey. Yeah. For me, on the flip side, for movies, I don't, similar to yours, I don't know if I could necessarily pinpoint an exact moment. It's more of a general concept or idea. But mine would have to be watching movies with my dad. And same with my mom as well. But my dad typically, on the weekends, was always watching something. You know, it was always watching something, whether it might have been something that was on cable at the time that we had cable, or, you know, the Saturday or Sunday movies that they used to show on like on Channel 5.
I remember that.
Yeah. This is Sunday morning action movies and things like that. And I remember just walking into the living room and he's laying on the couch watching a movie. Can't even tell you what that movie was, but then just kind of sitting there and just like watching it and just being enamored by like these movies. And again, this was back in the 80s, like the prime time of like them showing cheesy action movies and things like that. And my dad always was all about those movies. And that's really where just this love affair came from for me in movies, was just similar to you, like just a really good story. And even if it's not like super cheesy and things like that, something to just be entertained, something to just gravitate towards, that you're like, oh my gosh, like this is not like an everyday thing. This is something different, something magical. And for me, I would have to say that had sparked the love affair for me through the ages of my life. That really has just stood with me, similar to story time, where it's set me down that course of like, oh my gosh, this is going to be an obsession. So that's kind of where for me it started, was just different genres of movies of watching, but just really just sitting down and just taking it all in. So with that origin story, if you will, where your love was first sparked, kind of walk us and talk us through, you know, through schooling of stuff. So again, you got, you know, elementary, junior high, high school, and even some college. Through those journeys, how did your love for books grow, and, you know, what was the journey as far as like refining your palate or maturing as time goes on?
I would have to say that like it evolved over time. Story time was definitely like elementary school, and also, you know, as I got a little bit older in elementary school, like say maybe 5th or 6th grade, my family would participate in the library reading programs that they would have over the summer, and there was always incentive to do it because of the fact that you got these prizes, which was the best. Like, for example, the Book It program when it was around. And the Book It program, you know, for the books that you read, you got stickers that you could put on a pen. And then when you got a certain number of stickers, you got a free personal pan pizza from Pizza Hut. And this is when they still had, like, the restaurants. Right? And then they would bring it to you in, like, the little deep dish pan. Oh, it was so good.
It's funny as you say that, because I know for a fact, just because of who you are and how you are, I know you actually read. I actually know that, like, those 15-minute blocks that you'd have to, like, color in or get a stamp or that kind of thing. I knew that you read. Me, on the other hand, I was that bad kid who's like, oh yeah, I read for an hour. I read for 15 minutes because I'm like, I want my pizza. Like, it's all about the pizza, not the reading. So it's cool. Like, yet again, you bring up something, because I remember the summer programs and going to the library. And that whole program they have, which, gosh, I hope they still have.
I hope they do, too, because it really is important, especially when I think about, like, kids who couldn't buy books. Like, that was my family. We couldn't buy books. So if anything, the library was a place to go because that gave us access to books because we didn't have, enough money to buy them at the time. So that was kind of like my access.
Yeah.
So I hope they do still have that because it provides children with that access to read, even if they don't necessarily have it at home.
Yeah, and that's interesting that it's, again, part of your origin story for your love for books is, again, coming from a situation where, and of course I think back in the day too, that was kind of the thing where it wasn't like it is today as popular, just like, I'm going to go buy a book.
Yeah.
But at that time there, that kind of set the stage that you had to have a deep appreciation that when you finally got a book that you were like, oh my gosh, I want to read this book. Or like, they have the new this, it was like, I guess not taking it for granted. Like, you're just like, soaking it all in.
Yeah. Absolutely. Especially nowadays, now that I'm able to, I have the ability to buy the books. I don't take that for granted. Like, to me, it's like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing.
Every time you do it.
Every time I do it. Obviously. I mean, you can see it from here, like, and I'm so proud of, like, what's back here, all of these books. It's like one of my favorite things in the house is actually this bookcase. Because it shows my love of reading, but it also shows my deep appreciation and also gratefulness to be able to buy books, and just the love and the excitement you get from just buying one. Like the way like people treat shoes is the way I treat books. Like, they get excited to buy a pair of shoes, I get excited to buy books.
Yeah.
But that came more in my adult life.
Okay.
But over time it was all about the library. It was all about going to the library and reading Roald Dahl when I was still in elementary school, and then it evolved into like Sweet Valley High. I was evolved into Sweet Valley High. And I think I read a little bit of, I think also the Babysitter's Club, which was a big deal, a little bit of Goosebumps.
Yeah.
And then it evolved a little bit more. And then I feel like in my college years, I didn't really, actually in high school, I did read in high school, but that was more like required reading,
The classics.
The classics.
Classics for grades.
And don't get me wrong, like, some of them were good. Like, A Tale of Two Cities to this day, I'm like, that was high school, and then,
the definitive read.
The definitive read, like, it was required, but it was awesome. Scarlet Letter, it was required, but it was awesome. Old Man in the Sea, horrible. Absolutely terrible. I do not want to read that book ever again. Like, that was, Grapes of Wrath.
For like 20 years, I've just been hearing about those books. Whenever we talk about her love of books and things in general, those tend to always come up in the conversation. And it has not changed. It is the same temperature, the same tempo.
So true. Yeah. So high school, man, it was mostly required reading. Then I got to college, and I just didn't really read as much. I think it's just because you just get busy with work and school, and it wasn't a priority, the balance.
And then also, too, like, pretty much it's predominantly textbook reading at that point.
It's mostly textbook.
If you're going to be reading, it might as well be reading for school and not for leisure.
Yeah, it wasn't for leisure at all, and eventually over time I picked it back up again, and I believe, I feel like in my adult life, it circled back around when,
just like that.
it circled back around, or came back around when the Twilight series came out.
Oh, okay. So when the young adult,
that young
boom
adult,
occurred.
that young adult bubble, or that young adult timeline, where it, like, I don't know if young adult literature became more popular, or
I think around that time is when it really became a genre, a force of nature, if you will, a genre. Because I think before then, young adult lit had been around forever, but it was really that borderline, and again, Harry Potter's another one that kind of teetered that line as that series went on and became a little darker, a little bit more, like, deep.
Right.
It started to really get this, like, oh, these are kids' books, but they're not.
Yeah.
So now we're going to call them young adult. Let's go with young adult.
That's YA, right? So, and it had gained a lot of traction. I was a little bit behind the times, but eventually I ended up starting with, like, Twilight, and then there were also all of these other series that came out that I just started reading one after the other. So it was like Twilight set, Hunger Games, set.
So you were
the
catching
Divergent series, the Maze Runner series, like all of this young adult literature eventually evolved into like the library, which is back here, because now I read a range of different things. And I think that's just the range that I have. I think it's just based off of just some of the reading that I've done over the years and some of the stuff that I've kind of picked up and been into.
Okay.
So that's kind of where it's evolved. Like, I don't know if my taste is refined. I don't know.
No, in all honesty, I think it's one of those ones where, in these situations, especially if you love something, your palate should never be refined. It can evolve, but I think to say to refine it is to close the doors on some things.
Yeah.
And I think as a lover of something, you always want to be open to anything and everything, and not be like, no, I'm not reading that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's cool, because I think for you always do a good balance between having something kind of in this genre, something a little silly maybe, to like, it's almost like watching TV. Like you have a drama, you have an action, and then you just have a comedy or just the stupidest, silliest reality TV show.
Right.
And I think that just keeps things balanced to where you're not just like, another deep drama.
Yeah, it keeps things interesting, right? Like, I don't just read young adult. Like, I read horror, which I find interesting. I read self-help, self-improvement books. I read educational type books. There's a lot of different types of books that I read. It really kind of comes down to just what I feel like reading at the time, what strikes me, what sounds interesting. Because sometimes I'll have books on my shelves for years, and I will not touch them. I'm just not in the mood. It's like I'm not ready for it. My spirit isn't ready. But over time, eventually, when it feels like it's the right time, that's what I'll read. So.
Or like we talked about last episode, if a pandemic hits, you got a library here that you can basically be like, I bought that book 5 years ago. I think it's time to read it now.
Very
I think I got some time.
Yeah, this is a good time.
I don't need to order it. I don't need to run out. I'm going to start reading some books.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's interesting because, again, talking about, like, your first love, that, like, moment that you got hit with Cupid's arrow, and then kind of the journey between that moment and, like, where you're at today. For me, similar, like, with movies, like I said, it started off with just watching, like, random movies with my dad and things like that. And then it started to go that natural course as well. So, again, sitting on the couch watching movies with my dad. This was back in let's say the back half of the 80s at this point here. So, sitting there watching things with him, again, he loved watching action, different things like that. So, got very well versed in your Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, your Sylvester Stallone's, love the Rocky series to this day. And then also...
Oh, sorry. No. Because I'm thinking about, like, this timeline.
Yeah.
And it just makes me think of, like, how old you were when you were really in this, like, thrown into this universe of movies. So that was, like, when you were under 10?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
watching action movies.
This started, and it's funny that you bring this up. Honestly, this is, like, when you got struck with that arrow, kindergarten is 5 years old, 6 years old, that kind of thing. That was me. It was, like, 5 or 6, so it was kind of cool that, like, watching these, like, rated R, like, movies, whether they were on TV, which obviously they're edited, but, I was fortunate at times growing up to have cable occasionally. We never had cable straight through because, again, if you're a kid of the 80s, I don't think, or just a kid growing up in the 80s, the early 90s, I don't think any of us ever really had cable straight through. Yeah. We had it at times that, like, times were good, we had cable. Times not so good, cable's got to go.
Right.
So when we did have cable, obviously, HBO was kind of in the mix there and stuff like that. Right. And so here I am, probably, like, if we focused on, like, from, like, 5 to, like, say... through like 8th grade, which puts you at like 14 in that. So for almost 10 years, it's just watching a little bit of everything. But again,
that's cool.
I started though 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool because for me, it started on the couch. It started on the couch watching it with my dad. And then like it started to slowly evolve into like, well, my dad's not here right now, so I'm going to watch... This is on Channel 5 right now,
right.
Or Back in the day, I used to record movies on VHSs
Yep.
off of HBO
Yep.
or off of Channel 5. And so I started to build a little library of movies that were my own, you know? So I'm like, oh, you know what? I feel like watching Rocky 3. I'm going to push in that tape, and it was from Channel 5, and there's commercials and everything, like, fast forward.
Yep.
And so there was kind of that piece. That was like that slow education and introduction to things. And then I was fortunate enough to have an awesome aunt who would come and take me and my older brother out on the weekends for like a Saturday, like twice a month, so like every other. And she would take us to go do like all kinds of things. We did recreational things like play pool, we went bowling, you know, all types of things. And then my all-time favorite, whenever we would do it, is she would always take us at some point to the movies. So I was fortunate enough, again, that 5, 6, and older range to have gone to the movies, where I can honestly say that I went to the movies 1 to 2 times a month. You know?
Nice, yeah.
And again, a lot of people growing up back then, that wasn't a norm. Not like it is today. And I'm so grateful and thankful for that, because I got to see like all of like the classics in the theaters. And again, same thing goes to like my mom and dad. Like they would take us during the summer blockbuster months to like the big movies, you know. So got to see the 1989 Batman in theaters on opening day.
Nice. That's cool.
Got to see Ninja Turtles the opening weekend. Just like little, like everything, you know. And so for me, that's where that love affair with movies just kind of came from.
And it's really cool because it's connected to family. You know what I mean? Like your dad, your aunt, you know, your family going to summer blockbusters.
Yeah.
You know, that's where your love really started.
It is. And I really appreciate the fact that they helped fuel that fire. They allowed me to really just jump in head first, you know? And that's not even including you know, summer times, you know, because summer times back in the day, and this is where it was just amazing, it was the age of rental videos stores. Blockbuster, oh my god, that's a whole other episode if I talk about Blockbuster. I remember, real quick side tangent, I remember the first time I walked into a Blockbuster, first time ever, and I remember I died and went to heaven. And I remember back in the day with the other video stores, it was about if the case was on the shelf, they had it in stock. So you take the case and you go up there. But Blockbuster really kind of revolutionized that, where they had the case and then they had the actual videos of the games behind it. And so if that wasn't there, it was out. Yeah. And this was around the time that I think it was Super Mario Brothers 2 came out. It might have been 3, but I think it was 2. Went into Blockbuster the first time. They had it on the shelf as far as the box. Got super excited, and then you find out, like, oh, Blockbuster doesn't operate this way. It's out. So, but in that age, again, being so fortunate and lucky of having, like, movies on regular television, but then also the video store.
Yeah.
And so during the summers, you know, Blockbuster was still the upcoming thing, so it was pretty expensive, so we only went there every once in a while. But it was all about the grocery store rental places. So you had places like Smitty's and Smith's and Fry's, and Hollywood Video came down later in the road, but then Superstar Video and the smaller mom and pop shops. And it was all about like renting movies and just watching them. At the time, my brother, who's 3 years older than I am, my parents would take us and we would rent movies. So a lot of times the supermarket places had movies for like, you know, Tuesday deals or Monday deals where they're like 99 cents or $2 for a rental.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that's definitely a throwback.
And so my parents would take us because we were old enough to stay at home together and watch each other. Or I should say my brother was old enough to watch me, but I've always been kind of the older one, if you will. I think I might have been watching him. So we would they'd be like, hey, let's rent like 10 movies for you guys, you know, or let's rent this. My brother would rent his 5, I would rent my 5, and that's all we would do. We would spend the entire week during the summer, and we would just watch movies. So for me, my palette was very like, oh, I like this action movie, and it was all about ninja movies and kung fu, or like cartoons, or this and that. And so I would try to get new stuff, but it was always like re-rentals. And then my brother was more into like, because again he was older, dramas and horror movies and like lots of different things. And so I'm super appreciative is that those genres that I had one or two movies that I may have like loved, it really just kind of stopped there. And so I was introduced to a lot of stuff. So going back to your comment about family, and I never really noticed this, but it is really deeply rooted in family,
right?
You know, and that's actually pretty cool to look at things to be like, wow, like each person kind of played a part without even knowing it, even without me even realizing it and where I'm at. And I wish I could say section by section, like you said. I'm like, oh, I started reading this and I did that. For me, movies, like I said, from like that 5 or 6 years old to probably I'll even go all the way to high school up to like 18 or so. It was just literally anything and everything,
right?
And any way that I could watch it. So it was again renting, watching. I almost said streaming, renting or watching it on TV and things like that. And it's just I could not get enough of watching movies. And there's just this. For me, I just love being dropped into this world, and I imagine it's the same thing with you. But I'll actually save that because that's going to go into the next question I have for you. But it's wild taking that journey down the road, you know, and again, keeping it kind of condensed for the viewers out there. But it's just so nostalgic. It just kind of hits me in that point where I'm like, wow, like how different things used to be, but how awesome, but yet how different they are today.
Right. Absolutely.
And just glad that I had these opportunities and how things kind of played out. Because Lord knows I've seen some amazing movies and I've seen some not so amazing movies, but every single one is important and tells a story when I remember thinking about it or going back to it. So with that said, because I can talk about it forever and not give specifics, just generally talk about it. When it comes to your love for books and everything on that, and all relationships, we all know this, no matter what. There's some love and hate, some give and take. So let's start off. We're basically going in the categories of kind of love, hate. Like, what do you love and not so much love about books and stuff? But let's start with what you don't. Let's start with the negative first and be like, what is it about books that you're kind of like, ugh, that's kind of frustrating, or that's boo boo.
I would have to say that as much as I love books, as much as I love buying books, I wish that when it comes to their like regular price point, it wasn't so high. And you know,
because I almost feel like that's like buying a video game now.
It is, like, depending, like, especially if it's like hardcover.
Oh, brand new,
yeah. Brand spanking new, like fresh out of the box. It could cost you at least $30.
And again, you are the type of person who you're a traditionalist, so you're not really about ebooks.
Yeah, I tried ebooks. I tried that with the Kindle, but I like a physical book. And
that physical attachment.
To
you just can't give it up.
And I just say that about the price point of books because I know what it's like not being able to buy them.
Yeah.
And I think about individuals who would love to just buy a book, or kids who would love to have like children's books, and they don't have the ability to buy those books because of the fact that, you know, they don't necessarily have the finances for that. You know, if you have to make a choice between groceries and a book, you know what I mean? You're going to pick groceries, or rent or a book, you're going to pick, you know,
it's not a necessity, it's a luxury.
No, it's not a necessity, it's a luxury.
And the way that the publishing houses and the way that they sell things, it's pretty expensive.
It is, and I understand they got to make their money, they got to make their change. That's the business of it. That's how it works.
So that's the reason why probably for you, you're like, unless, again, similar to like people that sometimes go to movies and don't go to movies, it's all about picking and choosing what you're going to actually buy because you're like, I've got to read this, I've got to watch this.
Right.
Versus like, I'll wait for it to come out on TV, or I'll wait for it to stream. You know, in this case here for you, I'll wait till, you know, the soft cover comes out or it's on the bargain bin.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The bargain bin. It's very true.
I say that because There's sometimes where she'll come home and then she's got like books like this high, and I was like, "Good bargain bin shop," and she's like, "Yes."
Yeah. It's like this one was on this shelf or this one was in this bin, so that's why I was able to collect them.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate things like Amazon, places like Half Price Books, where I feel like you can get reasonable prices for your books. So
Yeah.
I appreciate those stores or those avenues, right, where you can actually buy them. So I wish they wouldn't be so expensive. Have I been the person to buy that $30 book? Yes, every once in a while I do. So,
But at least it's every once in a while.
Every once in a while. So that's one thing.
You gotta
I
treat
think.
yourself.
You gotta treat yourself. Yeah. So that is one thing that I really wish wasn't a factor.
You're like, that's boo boo.
Yeah, that's a little bit boo boo. Another thing that drives me crazy, and this is what I hate about books, is if the ending is absolutely horrid or horrible, especially if that book has like 300 or 400 pages, and I know Anthony's laughing because he knows what book I'm talking about. Freaking Children of Virtue and Vengeance. Like that book was unfortunately disappointing because the end. Because I am a person like, if I love a book, it drives me crazy when a book is great in the middle. Great at the beginning, great in the middle, and then boom, it just ruins it.
Well, it's like you're going on this epic journey.
Yes.
And then it's like if you go on an epic journey, and then right before you get to where you're getting to, like you fall off the cliff and die. Then you're like, great, what was that for? Yeah,
like,
it's kind of that like you're just kind of punched in the heart where you're like, oh.
It is hard because you get so invested.
Yeah.
And then just for it to just fall off like that is disappointing. So that's probably one of the things I hate about books, is that you may find yourself reading. It's good. You finally get to like the last like 20 pages and you're like, what happened? That has happened before. And it's not just with the book I just mentioned. Another one, Couple Next Door. That's another one that I felt like last 20 pages, I was like, what happened? So, if anything, if you can tell, that is stuff that gets under my skin.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
So those would probably have to be like your top two, where you're just like, I love this, but there's this and this.
Yeah.
This and that.
Yeah.
For me, when it comes to movies,
what do you hate?
Okay, so the first thing I would have to say, and this is boo on me, but nowadays, like, trailers are horrible. Trailers give away. I mean, that's always kind of been an issue, but not so much. Like, I can still go back and like remember trailers from back in the day, and absolutely love some trailers.
Yeah.
I'll revisit some. I'm that nerdy that I'll go back and revisit it. And I'm like, oh my god, I remember when I was this kid. Like, I can remember the Ninja Turtles trailer. I still to this day watch that trailer and I'm still in wonderment and awe that I'm like, oh my gosh, that is the Ninja Turtles live on screen. It just takes me back there. But nowadays, I feel like trailers just ruin movies. And I don't get it, and I don't understand it, because it's been there. I'm not going to lie, it's always kind of been there. But it's so blatant now where I'm just like, a person who loves trailers, because I've got an appreciation for an editor that can just make you be like, I need to get my ass in that seat, and I need to watch that. But then now I'm like, sometimes like the comedies, like I kind of hate that because you get into there and like, holy crap, that's like all the funny parts, you know? So a person who loves movies and loves trailers, I found myself in the last couple of years where I avoid them now. Like I just kind of don't want to watch them, and something so magical about going and watching them in a theater and be like, oh, the trailers, what are they going to show? Even to the point now, I'm like, ugh. So I'm kind of glad that there's reserved seating now, because now if I want to skip the trailers, I can kind of just walk in and with comfort. But for me, that's a really sore spot, because that's a whole other little subgenre of like enjoyment is trailers. But that part bothers me, and I'll probably piggyback off of the whole thing too of, you know, the end of something. Because as a movie watcher, I believe it's similar for you. I throw it all in there. Like, I'm invested. You know, like, this is the reason why dramas are probably lower on my like list. Because for the fact that, like, if I'm going to watch a drama, like, I'm gonna put myself in it,
right.
to the point where like I'm done, especially those deep dramas. Like I'm gonna feel something by the end.
Right.
And this is kind of a twofer. So two things that are in this make up this dislike is one, I hate when something's just so over dramatic or so like just bleak and negative. And again, the world isn't perfect, things of that nature. But sometimes I'm like, damn, like as a viewer, give me something to just have a little bit of balance. You know, like let me just get that taste out of my mouth for a split second. And then it's just like the ending of things. It's like, you know, you take all of this time to get here, and I always feel like the ending is so important because it's like, God, stick the landing.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, I'm already thinking of a couple. I won't even go there as I pause dramatically. But I would have to say it's like trailers, and then it's just kind of like the mishandling of maybe the tone and the ending of a movie. Because again, I'm all about the characters. I'm about the journey, the story. Where did we start and where are we getting? And then it's like, really? Are you serious? That's what we're gonna go with?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That was 2.5 hours. Great.
Yeah.
Sipping my coffee. Okay, so with that said, as we're going to start to kind of wind things down, but before we do, love. The love part of it. Only one, and I'll restrain myself from one. So, because hating on something, you can have a list of things.
Yeah, you can.
But love. What is the number one thing you love about books?
The number one thing I love about books is the immersion. You know, there's just something about being immersed in a world, whether that
just gave me chills.
So, like...
like, ooh, I was instantly transported. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, it's kind of like that same feeling, though, that, like, ooh, like, there's just something...
You're actually being transported. And again, that's boo on me when it comes to books, is that I have a creative mind, but sometimes I feel like, again, because I love movies, I'm like, show me, let me hear it, let me like be fully immersed in that round. So kudos to you because you create this world.
Yeah.
And again, it gives me goosebumps because I'm like, that's got to be cool to just be able to create this world based on somebody's words on a paper.
Yeah, which is really cool. And I love the ability to be in control of what I see in my mind. You know, like, yes, the author puts the words on paper, but ultimately I control what I see. Yeah. And then maybe that's one of the reasons why, like, for example, I enjoy reading horror, but I can't, it's really difficult for me to watch it on screen. And maybe that's because, like, on screen, someone controls what I see. Yeah. Compared to in horror, when I read it, it's like, okay, I have an image, but I'm in control of what that image is going to look like.
And again, when it comes to horror, less is more, and it's always more effective. But I think it's always like, let's throw more out to the viewer.
Yeah.
You know, in that regards. And again, my hat goes off to you in that regards because I'm super jealous in that regards because I'm unfortunately... because I'm a movie watcher, I'm that person who's like, show me, give it to me that way. So I want to see it like, this is what it is. And I've always tried to go down that route for the full immersion of my own imagination. And then I'm like, yeah, this is cool. I'm going to go watch a movie.
Right, because
show me, give me.
You know, the movie can give you like 2 hours
so
of
lazy.
entertainment. You know?
So
I don't
lazy.
think it's lazy. It's
no.
just...
I know, but compared to somebody who's actually putting in the effort and the work, my hat goes off to book readers because you guys create this world based on what you're given.
Yeah.
In every world, you can give 5 people the same book, and they'll see, for the most part, the same general outline. But it's in their own imagination, their own color, their own tapestry. You know? And that, to me, is cool.
Yeah, and that's what I really enjoy is just being a part of that bubble. And also the ability to be a part of so many different bubbles at one time.
Yeah.
Like, the universe in The Hunger Games is different from the universe in Twilight.
Yeah.
And the universe in, you know, Stephen King's books, like The Outsider, is different from, like, Matilda by Roald Dahl, right? Or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. You have the opportunity to be immersed in multiple universes at one time, and that's one of the things I love.
For me, for movies, I'm gonna bite your your thing. I'd have to say the immersion as well.
Yeah.
For me, it's that magical place it takes you. Again, there is no better place, in my opinion, to see a movie than a movie theater. Which is interesting because, again, pandemic, 2020, all of that stuff, and that has slowed things down or made it non-existent, at least for here now. But things are, picking up, opening up again. Oh man, like, I'll take it back to being a kid. Ninja Turtles, for example. Knowing that I'm going to go and see the 9:30 showing at Christown Mall's United Artists Theater. Yeah, yeah.
Throwback.
Yes. 9:30, Christown United Artists Theater. That was the one you had to take the stairs up when they actually had it.
Yes, I remember, yes.
Being in the big theater there, and needing to get there, needing to get the seat that I wanted to sit in, lights coming down, screen starts playing, trailers play, and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to literally see the Ninja Turtles live action, and this is going to change my life. Every movie I go to, I felt like it's going to change my life in some way or form. And I'm so grateful that I have not lost that in the plus years since just being introduced to movies. And it's just when the lights go down or the video or the streaming starts to play and here's the opening logos or the title card, I'm in it to the very end, and I've only walked out of like 2 movies in my life. That's a whole other video, but one of them was out of respect for another person who was uncomfortable, i.e. this person in a horror movie.
Yeah.
And then the other one was Last Airbender. Whole other video.
Yeah.
And again, if you were watching our stuff on Instagram and Facebook,
you know what's up.
You know what's up. But for good or for worse, I'm in it. I'm in it to the very end, and whatever you're trying to present, the world you've created, you've got my attention, and I've got nothing but respect for you to be fully immersed in it. And I'm trying to fill what you're trying to put down. I'm trying to pick up what you're putting down.
That's so cool.
And and it's just,
yeah, see, like, the way you talk about movies is how I feel about books. Like, in the same vein on my side, I wish I had that passion for movies. Like, I don't think about it in that way. I'm just like, cool, a movie.
And the flip side, for the book, I'm like, that's too much work. What do you mean? What do you mean I have to come up with all of this stuff? And I love the fact of the movies that I absolutely adore, the movies I love and cannot live without, still have that magic for me. Jaws, Halloween, those movies that just, it's like the appreciation of like editing, directing, lighting, costumes, like the whole nine, and it's just being transported on there and just revisiting that stuff and being taken there. It's such a great feeling. So I'm gonna kind of like now pivot because I'm already starting to feel myself get on a roll, and I like to talk, so I'll talk about this forever. So maybe I'll do a rough cut where I go further into that. But it's just so cool that the love and appreciation, as you said it, it kind of transcends this whole other thing, and it's kind of cool that the way I speak of it, you speak of that in something different, with it being books and with movies, but it's a universal language and appreciation that, like, you get it.
Yeah.
And I get it.
Yeah.
It's just your books, I'm movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so with that said, because there's so much more to talk about this one, but again, we just, like to take it from that perspective of just, this is the kind of conversation we'd have as we drink some coffee and just, we set the tone for that. So closing thoughts. First love, books, everything on that end. What's still left to just say is to the world of like closing things out for books and your love for it?
Books and my love for it. I feel like I'm at a point in my life right now when it comes to books that I feel like I'm truly leaning in to my passion. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like, I have acknowledged and accepted the fact that I'm passionate about books, It used to be just, I just read,
I'm a reader.
I'm a reader.
I'm a casual reader.
I'm a casual reader, but it's really more than just reading. It's really a passion, and I've really accepted and acknowledged that, and I've leaned into that. I mean, it's more than just books now.
And I'll kind of take a little responsibility for that, because I'm an uber nerd on anything I have passion or love for, even if it's a little bit. And so I usually egg individuals on to embrace it.
Yeah.
Like, F it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, lean in.
Yeah, if you're going
to...
one thing that you say often is, if you're going to be about it, be about it.
I'm like, totally like, smooth criminal Michael Jackson lean into it. You know, like
lean hard.
Lean hard into it.
And, oh, go ahead.
No, it's just, again, I'm an instigator in that regards, you know, and so for me, from an outside perspective, I love the fact of me hearing that as your closing thoughts, because there's nothing better than just embracing those passions and those loves that individuals have.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's going to look like different things for different people, you know, and for me, it's not just books. It's like being a book lover, you know, I'm such a nerd, like, it has evolved into like t-shirts that have to do with books. And for my birthday, buying myself a little stamp, right?
For your personal library.
For my personal library, which I think is like the coolest thing. And that's just me kind of expanding my nerddom and my passion.
Which, side note, when she's like, I got this, I'm ordering this for my birthday, it was like, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I'm resisting the urge, like, I want to go over here and snatch it off of my shelf right now, but I'm not going to do that. But I'm just saying that as an example that I feel like I'm leaning into it. And I guess my message to our viewers would be, if there's something that you're passionate about, or you're like, oh, it's just a hobby, it's like really, really reevaluate that. It's probably more than just a hobby. It's probably definitely a passion. And my recommendation to you is embrace it, own it, acknowledge it, lean into it. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah, my closing thoughts are gonna, in true fashion, or pretty much echo kind of your perspective as well. And again, it just all revolves around the fact that I'm like, it's just like if you love someone, it's funny because I always use relationship scenarios for like everyday life, but I always feel like, you know, they're pretty relevant, because if you love somebody and you care about them, I'm like, it's kind of like the ultimate form of like what you're willing to do, what you're willing to like see and understand. And I mean, go for it. You know, and don't shield it, or don't be a closet like obsessive person about it. You know, like, let the world know you're like, my gosh, I love to read, I love to work out, I love movies, I, you know, love Legos, or whatever the case is. I love playing video games, whatever the case may be. Because for me, just again, this episode, sitting here talking about lights coming down and Ninja Turtles and all this other stuff, I'm like, those are the things that I fondly remember and I appreciate. And there's nothing better than collecting these memories in your life, but of the things that you absolutely love and want to cherish.
Right.
You know? And also too, in an obsessive way, sometimes wanting to share it with other people. Mm-hmm. And again, like with her book stamp, you know, I'll be like, you gotta watch this movie. And then she watched it and she's like, that was cool. Like, I'm glad you shared that with me.
Yeah,
but I only need to see it once. I'm good. But absolutely, lean into what you love, appreciate it for what it is, and also take the time to appreciate and understand where other people are coming from on the things that they love, and especially if they mean something to you, always give it your best try.
Yeah.
And if it ain't your cup of tea, then at least support it and just be like, hey, you know, that's cool.
Yeah. That's nice.
That works.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that said, again, we always love, you know, the nerdy randomness that we get into with A Cup, Us, and You. Because again, like I said, we like to take it from the coffee shop to here. And if you like what we're putting down, you know, hit that like button. You know, definitely subscribe, because again, this is what we're doing. It's random, it's just for fun, and it's just us hitting record pretty much with no edits and just running with it, with our thoughts, and hopefully we're entertaining. Hopefully. And if not, that's cool too. We're having a blast doing this.
Yeah, we are.
But again, thank you for viewing and making it to this point in the video. Much appreciated.
Yeah.
But from myself and Tanisha, as our cups say, be you, be kind. And with that said, this has been another episode of A Cup, Us, and You. Until next time.
Bye.
See you guys.
Thank you. See ya.